Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to National Apprenticeship Week. I'm your host, Ali from CareerMap TV, and today we are joined by Network Rail to discuss their apprenticeships. During this session, you will learn about specific ins and outs of their Engineering Level 3 apprenticeship specifically, and what it's like to work at Network Rail. This session will be recorded and will be up on our website within a week. So we have a shorter session on this one because it's so specific on the Engineering Level 3 apprenticeship side. So at the end, there will be a questionnaire, a little Q&A. So leave your questions in the Q&A box and we'll come back to them at the end. So without further ado, I'll pass on to National Rail.
Hi there, thanks for that. Hi everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. Let me just get it onto the screen. So my name's Amarvir, and so just give a bit of introduction about myself first. I've been working at Network Rail for the past just over 8-9 years now. I work specifically in the early careers team where we focus on recruitment for our graduate and apprentice programs. And I myself started at Network Rail as a graduate before progressing and rotating through the company to the position that I am today. Today's presentation, I'm planning on talking specifically about our Level 3 Engineering Apprenticeship scheme. The presentation will last around sort of 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll go over sort of the main points of the scheme, along with some tips and advice when it comes to application processes. I'll try and throw in some advice that's not just applicable for our schemes, but also for any other apprenticeships that you might be also applying for, and then we'll finish up with a question and answer session. So before we go any further, I thought I'd just do a bit of an introduction in terms of who we are at Network Rail. Now, contrary to popular belief, we do not in fact drive trains, but what we do is we own, operate, maintain and develop all the infrastructure that's related to the assets which the trains themselves run on. So that might be all the tracks, the stations, the viaducts, the tunnels, everything sort of around the actual train itself, which allows us to transport people, millions of people every day. Despite being an engineering company, we do pride ourselves on being a customer service focused organization first, and we have the strap line that we put passengers first, and we've delivered some of the biggest infrastructure projects in the UK. People might have heard of the likes of Crossrail, Birmingham New Street, the new Applewood Wood Station, for example. We have been sort of running some of the biggest infrastructure projects in the past 5 to 10 years here in the UK. We're one of the oldest railways sort of in the world, and despite all the challenges and complexities which that can bring working on existing and old infrastructure and implementing in new technologies, we are the safest railway in Europe. And as part of our sustainability pledge, we're committed to being having no carbon emissions by the year 2050. I think currently we've reduced about 90% of them at the moment. Now, why is Network Rail important to the economy as a whole? So not only are we sort of linking people into either allowing people to go to work, people to visit loved ones, people to access different areas of the country. What we do is also a big portion of our services also freight, so taking sort of lorries and vans off the roads and having them utilize our rail network instead. We're one of the biggest property portfolio owners in the UK, owning a whole variety of different bits of land as well as assets. And not only are we we are part of a supply chain, but we're also the supplier and customer to various different organisations. So we play a very intricate and key role in the UK as a whole, not only in terms of requesting and generating sort of new business and improving the economy, but also as a part of the supply chain in on itself. Now, there is a fair bit of change happening at Network Rail at the moment, and what we're looking to do is to modernise the railway. Network Rail is slowly and eventually going to be moving into a new organisation called Great British Railway. And the idea behind Great British Railway is it will own not only the Network Rail infrastructure side of things, so all the assets, etc., but a couple of other organisations. And the idea behind that is essentially that it will allow us to be more coordinated, ultimately with the aim to ensure that passengers get a smooth and slick and seamless service whenever they're operating on the railway itself. Now, our core values, and I'll talk a little bit later about why I'm mentioning these specifically. That will come a bit obvious a little bit later on in the presentation. So the first one is to always be safe. Obviously, we're working on a live railway environment that involves a lot of heavy machinery, but also fast-paced moving trains, which are carrying people up and down the country. So the first thing we need to make sure is those that work in and around the infrastructure and the assets are safe. Everybody gets home safely every day. But also that includes then our passengers, ensuring they can ensure that they will get from A to B in a very safe manner. And thirdly, also our surrounding stakeholders, the people that live alongside the railway, etc., ensuring the safety of those and wildlife as well. Our next value is caring about people. So in order for everyone to really bring themselves and the best out of themselves every day to work, we're an organisation that's focused on caring for each individual, making sure everyone has the support that they need in order to basically thrive and bring their best versions of themselves to work every day. With a big company like Network Rail and some of the big complex engineering challenges and that we work on, teamwork is absolutely critical. Again, being able to work in smaller teams in order to finish and achieve objectives, but also working as part of a wider team to understand and working with other teams that might be third party to Network Rail, that might be train operating companies, that could be people from government organisations, as well as local businesses. Being able to operate and work with others in other teams is critical to ensuring that the work gets done. We're also empowered to act. So no matter the seniority, what level, how long you've been at the organisation, if there is any way of doing things better, doing things safely, finding new innovative ways to sort of combat existing challenges, every one of us is empowered to act and put those thoughts forward to be implemented, ultimately with the aim of making sure we're as efficient, safe as we possibly can be. And finally, we have a very big focus on diversity and inclusion. We want to ensure that the railway accurately reflects the population of people that we serve. And basically, we want to encourage everyone from all different races, backgrounds, genders, cultures, etc., to come and work at Network Rail. And those that do, we ensure that we're able to try and offer as many opportunities for them to not only share their culture, but also ensure that they feel comfortable working in Network Rail. Now, I'm going to talk specifically about our Level 3 Engineering Apprenticeship scheme. So, the Engineering Apprenticeship scheme, we look for people who, again, as I mentioned, love working in a team, yet are able to make judgments based on things that you pick up as you go through the scheme. We ideally like people who have a bit of an eye for detail, are able to solve problems, and able to sort of think logically. One thing to note is with this scheme, whilst certain routes and disciplines are more indoor based, some of the pathways are more outdoor based. And especially when you're on your apprenticeship scheme, chances are you'll get a flavour for quite a bit. So that does mean you could be working out in all weather, come rain, snow, sleet, sunshine. And that could also involve antisocial sort of shift patterns as well. So things like nights, weekends, which you're compensated for accordingly. So what we do request is that you're flexible and able to do that, as it's one of the main requirements for this scheme. And the final thing is again, sort of as I mentioned before, having that health and safety mindset at the forefront, just to ensure we all get home safely every day. Now, what you'll be doing, so as part one of our level 3 engineering apprentices, what will happen when you join our apprenticeship scheme is you will do a mix of online sort of studying, training at a local training centre, and then you'll also be sort of paired with a team at one of your local depots or offices. Now, the idea behind this is, as you do your online and sort of physical bits of learning, they'll give you the skills and the technical knowledge to allow you to take that information and begin implementing that in your local teams and local depots, where you'll be working with an experienced team of individuals. As the years progress on throughout the apprenticeship scheme, the idea is essentially the more that you learn and the more that you're taught, you're then able to sort of gradually and quickly implement that out into the real world, while still having the support network available to you of not only just your other colleagues, but also those in the apprenticeship training team as well. The one thing that we would say is, well, once you've completed your apprenticeship scheme, there's usually a whole variety of different roles and opportunities available. And the idea is as you progress through the scheme, you'll have constant catch-ups and conversations, not only with your line manager on who's be looking after you from a day-to-day perspective out in your local depot, but also that could be people from the Network Rail training team, mentors, as well as other buddies as well. Now, we have several different pathways, which when you join our apprenticeship scheme, you'll have the opportunity to specialize in one of these different pathways. At the beginning, and to be fair, throughout, you'll get a chance to have a bit of a taste of all the different pathways, so you've got an idea of where your skills and passions may lie. But some of the ones that are available are track, where you actually get hands-on, repair the track, the assets, making sure that the railway runs safely and efficiently. Overhead lines, so these are a lot of the electrical power systems that run over the top of the trains, and if you were to sort of specialize in that pathway, you'll make sure that a lot of the electrical systems are working. Typically this involves working at height and using some specific pieces of equipment, so being able to work at sort of a level of height and being comfortable there is always helpful. Signaling is another one of our pathways, and with this pathway, you'll be maintaining a lot of the signal networks that basically ensure our trains are running safely, but also sort of efficiently to their endpoints. And obviously, given the nature that we work in, you could be repairing faulty signaling equipment, or you could also be supporting in the next sort of set of upgrades that we're doing to our signaling assets and infrastructure. We also have a telecoms pathway. On this, you'll be working with a lot of our telecommunication systems. So that might be satellite, internet, GSM, train, radio systems. A little known fact was that we're one of the biggest, I think the third biggest telecoms provider in the UK. So working on our telecoms pathway, you'll have the chance again to ensure those systems are running, upgrading accordingly. And the final is our distribution and plant network pathway, sorry. So 38% of our network is electrified, and it'll be you'll be sort of helping and responsible for ensuring that we have efficient power going to all the different assets that are required, as well as making sure any faults are fixed and finding faults also. Now, in terms of entry requirements, you'll need to be aged 18 or over before September 23, because that's when our next recruitment intake will start. We are planning on going live for applications next week, Tuesday, so sort of on the 10th of February, but I'll go into a little bit more information about that towards the end. In terms of entry requirements and what you'll need, what we ask for is a GCSEs in English language, science, and one other subject at grades 9 to 4, and then maths at grades 9 to 5. We do accept a whole host of different equivalents. So if anybody does have any questions, please feel free to get in touch on our website. We've got a specific number and email address where if you've got any specific questions related to any equivalent qualifications you may hold, we'll be able to answer those. The salary in the first year is $10,609, and then you also receive a payment of $1,347 for completing the first year. Each year, the salary rises, and by the third year, it's looking at sort of just over 17,000. There are talks about the salary increasing, but I can't get into too much detail until that's been completely confirmed. This year, we've got a large list of locations which we're going to be recruiting for, and that's all the way up in Scotland down to the very south of England. I think for this year, for our level 3, we're recruiting around 200 different locations in England, Wales, Scotland. So we've got a whole host of different opportunities available sort of throughout the country. And we do have, we recruit for 2 intakes a year. So there's the September one, which we're about to go live for. And then we also go live again in March, which we accept applications for in sort of October time. Now, the application process. So our application process is relatively simple. The first bit is for you to submit an application form. This involves you having to basically fill in some basic information about who you are, what school you attended, what qualifications you have at the moment. You'll then go through to a couple of bits of online testing. The online testing varies in terms of what they'll ask you, but a good tip that I like to do I recommend for online testing, not just for us, but also for other companies as well, is if you do a bit of research about the company itself, have an idea of what the values, i.e. the ones that I touched on earlier, are of a company, have an understanding of what the company's priorities are. This will then help you in the online testing itself. As one of the tests we have is a multiple choice, and what it asks you is basically something that you're asked a scenario, and it's like you're asking what you're most likely to do against what you're least likely to do, and you have to rank them accordingly. So again, by having an idea of what priorities are important to us, i.e., for example, safety, working in a team, etc., and using those to prioritize first is probably one of the key nuggets of tips that I can help to ensure you're successful in the online testing. The video scenario, you're given a scenario and then you're asked to basically produce some sort of an outcome off the back of that. Again, the best thing you can do is if you do some general research in terms of who Network Rail are, what we're aiming to do, where our goals lie, and implement bits of those in the video scenarios themselves, you can't go too far wrong. And then the assessment center itself, I think the key thing to remember when going to assessment centers is whether they're in person or virtual, is to remember whilst you're there to do specific tasks, what we're ultimately looking for is the skills and attributes that you display and exhibit. So for example, if you're in an assessment center and it's a team activity, showing that you work well as a member of team, that you interact well with others, that you ask and build on other people's opinions and ideas are something that would rank you positively. The other thing I'd say about assessment centers is, and we see this every year, is please take some time, please respond, give some input, as our assessors can only go and score you based on the hour or the couple of hours that you're there taking part in the activity. And often sometimes we find candidates who don't necessarily speak too much, don't necessarily engage too much, and then therefore they don't score well, despite them, who knows, being the greatest candidate possible. But in those couple of hours, we weren't able to see it. When it comes to online assessment centres, the first thing I'd say is make sure you give yourself a clear area where you're able to focus on the day itself with no distractions. The closer to the Wi-Fi router, the better. Whilst we wouldn't necessarily not penalise you for having a poor internet connection or not being able to connect, as we have a couple of Plan Bs available, it's very easy to let that sort of knock your stride. If you're unable to connect to things, you start to panic a little bit and it takes you out of the momentum that you've got. Always have a glass of water next to you. Not only does it help to sort of break up every time you ask something or every time you want to sort of participate, but also it just gives you a chance to reflect on what's going on in the situation at the time. And those I would say are my biggest tips when it comes to assessment centres. Is take the time to prepare, give yourself the best environment to give yourself a chance to thrive. Don't worry if things go wrong. Like I said, sometimes internet connections can fall, etc. Don't let that knock you off your stride, because often employers, we have a plan B there, but just ultimately give yourself the best chance to succeed. Touching again just on the benefits of our level 3. So I mentioned the salary already. We also have 5 days volunteering leave that you can use for any charity. We get 28 days annual leave, and that excludes public holidays. We have a whole host of different employee benefits, whether that's budget planning, financial planning, savings on different supermarkets, phone contracts, access to pensions, health insurance, cycle to work schemes. And we also offer discount on season tickets too. Right, now that's the end of the presentation. I'm just going to open it up for any questions and answers.
Now we're back.
For Q&A, I will just leave this slide up here. As I mentioned, we're going live on the 10th of Feb. But if anyone is interested, I just request that you scan the QR code, and that will give you access to a form where you can register your interest, register your details. And that way, once we do go live, you'll be the first to be contacted to let you know. So you've got plenty of time to get your applications in. We give ourselves sort of 2 months that we'll be live for. But as we are recruiting across the country, what will happen is once we have enough applications for certain locations, we'll then stop accepting locations for those areas. So say, for example, we receive enough applications in Birmingham, we then will stop accepting any new ones for Birmingham. So in that case, I'd just say, if you are interested, please do get your applications in sooner rather than later.
Amazing stuff. On to the questions. Right, I'll try and see what we've got that hasn't been answered already. One from Mike here says, do you offer functional skills? I'm guessing that's skills outside of the skills you actually offer, like interpersonal skills and that. Yes,
we do actually. And as part of the apprenticeship scheme, you, as well as getting your actual qualifications in level 3 engineering, etc., there are a whole host of other courses that you are put through as well.
Question from Todd here. What is the role of the engineering apprentice in decision making for projects at Network Rail?
So I think that would depend based on the projects itself. Essentially what will happen is as you start, you'll have less impact until you understand the role, the more technical skills you build to get, you start to gain. And then as the years go on, like more and more responsibility is given to you, as well as being able to do more and more as well. So it's almost like a gradual approach as you become more technically sound and more comfortable in the environment that you're working in.
Amazing. I know, well, Yannick's saying, can you tell us about the benefits in person? You have just said that, but you got about season tickets there. Like season tickets for what specifically?
So that's a good point. So they're train season tickets. So if anyone requires train tickets to sort of commute, the season ticket loan is the season ticket is like you purchase it for the year, and essentially we offer 75% off the cost of that.
Amazing. Question from Samira here. How does Network Rail support apprentices in their career development?
So what will happen is throughout the apprenticeship scheme itself, you've got a couple of different touch points with people who have sort of a responsibility to make sure you're okay and you're getting on well. So the first of all, that will be your line manager, and that's the person that will be looking after you on a day-to-day basis. You'll also have someone in the training team. Jason Young, he's the level 3 scheme manager, and he overall looks after the scheme and the program, making sure everyone has what they need in terms of being able to progress and thrive. And what will happen is sort of periodically throughout those 3 years, you'll be catching up with each of these individuals as well as more. For example, we have specific coaches as well, and they'll be constantly talking and sort of speaking to yourselves in terms of what your ambitions are, what your aspirations are, how can we support and develop. What will also happen is once you complete the level 3 apprenticeship scheme and you actually go out into a real job, so to speak, you'll continue having those conversations on a regular basis with your line manager. So what we tend to find happen is once our engineers qualify and finish their apprenticeship schemes, they're then often put onto further courses and training and development opportunities, whether that's HNDs, degrees, etc. It all just depends on, I guess, business requirements and also what preferences any individual has.
Amazing. On to Vincent now. Hi everyone. Hello. Can you share any examples of how Network Rail is making a positive impact on society through its projects?
Oh, that's a good question. So I guess the first things first, from a sustainability perspective, we've already reduced carbon impact, our footprint by 90%. We're looking to be 0% by 2030. The other thing as well is through the likes of some of our big investment projects, whether that's working alongside Crossrail, etc., increasing the openness and transport for allowing people to move freely throughout the country. And then we also have a whole host of different sustainability projects going on to ensure that we look after local agriculture and wildlife that lives alongside our tracks, as well as a whole host of different internal sort of programs, etc., to support might be disadvantaged people from disadvantaged backgrounds into leadership programs, a variety of different talent programs, all focused in terms of to develop our people. There's a whole host of different ways that we're trying to make a positive difference, I guess.
Amazing, good stuff. Question from Pitt: how many apprenticeships will be available at each depot?
That varies depending on the different depots that we're recruiting for, just based on business need. So, for example, we might have, for example, 4 or 5 in Birmingham, but then we might only have 2 or 3 in Manchester. It all just varies, what I'd say. But what I'd say is, if they're on the website, apply sooner rather than later, just in case.
Okay, good stuff. So a good one from Vincent: how important is previous work experience to the application process for the engineering apprenticeship?
Not particularly, to be completely honest. We don't really ask for previous work experience, as we appreciate, especially this being a level 3. A lot of people might be coming out of college, education, etc., or after our first job. It's more about yourself as an individual. What can help is those that do have previous work experience being able to articulate some of those experiences when you're talking in our interviews, for example. But for those that don't, if you're able to sort of have an idea of the things that you might do outside of schools, you might work as part of a team, you might be working, doing some voluntary work, things like that. Think about the transferable skills that you're developing and that you're using, and think about how they might relate to a work context. So, for example, if you're the captain of your local five-a-side, think about it, not you just kicking a ball for 90 minutes, but think about the teamwork skills, the logistics, the leadership, etc., that you have to show, and possibly even planning an organisation, whether that be to book the pitches out at 12 o'clock every week.
No problem. Another one from Lauren, a good one. What's the biggest opportunity facing the engineering team right now?
Oh, the biggest opportunity, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, good question. So there's a lot going on in terms of changes to how the apprenticeships and engineering is run and the teams are run as a whole. I think the plan going forward is to make people more cross-disciplined. So as when I mentioned the pathways sort of earlier in my presentation, It's about making people have more of a holistic understanding of everything, so they're able to sort of provide expertise from more of a holistic perspective as opposed to just a one-track silo approach.
Now, I know you said about you might not need to know about certain engineering skills or what have you for when you're going for, but Brian says, what kind of online resources or materials do you recommend for someone preparing for the application process?
Honestly, I think there's no need to be too extensive, but if you've just got an idea in terms of Network Rail's values, what we stand for, so some of the stuff I touched on already, have an idea of sort of what the plans are going forward. Literally an hour's worth of Googling search on Network Rail website, maybe sticking Network Rail into Google as well. That should give you more than enough. I think if you can just show that you've got a bit of an idea, that's all you need really.
Someone in the same aspect. Question for Sam: can you share any examples of common mistakes that candidates make during the application process for the apprenticeship?
Oh, I think the main thing is those that don't necessarily have an idea of like the environment that we operate in. So when I mentioned, for example, some of the online tests, those that, for example, who don't realize and consider safety being such a key thing to some of the questions, answering those questions may not do as well as some of those that understand that safety is pretty important at Network Rail.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Question from Crystal here: will a diploma in higher education certificate be enough?
What I'd say is, if you've got any specific questions, I'd say if you go onto the website, we've got and go onto the apply section, we've got a specific email address and a number there to answer any specific queries in terms of equivalent qualifications.
Yeah. What about job offerings after finishing the apprenticeship? How likely are they?
So technically, you apply for a role, if that makes sense, but people aren't booted off at the end of it, if that makes sense. You'll get the support and the encouragement and all the tools you need to try and ensure you're able to take your next step, whether that be a technician or an operative. It's a path that's well trodden before, put it like that.
Just a query here from Mohammed. He's regarding the assessment process. You were talking about internet connection regarding the assessment center. So will this part of the process be in person or held virtually?
So likely they'll be virtually, but I was just giving some generic advice, not just for ours, but also any other people that you might be applying for. We have we'll have make sure we've got your contact details, etc. So if the worst does happen, we'll contact you, and we can always, I don't know whether we dial you in or we do something separate, but we've got contingencies in place for that sort of thing. But the best thing to do is if you can avoid it, try and avoid it. Obviously, that's not always possible, but it might just. Sometimes I know what it's like. Like once your internet connection goes, you're already in the swing of things. It can just bring on a level of panic which you don't need.
We have two similar questions. Bilal and Alicia. Alicia says, I'm 36. I have NVQ level 3 in child. Kind of want a career change. Is it worth me applying?
Yeah, we have loads. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, but Bilal says the same thing. He says he wants to make a career in railway, qualified electrician as well. What will be the best route for myself?
Again, what I'd say from what would be the best route, I'll check out the website to see what qualifications you're best aligned to. For those that don't necessarily have any experience at all, like the childcare example, yeah, we absolutely do have lots of people who change careers, and you don't necessarily need experience at all. We've had people in their like late 40s and 50s who've also changed careers and to go ahead of our engineering apprenticeship scheme. So no age limits, and yeah, you're absolutely able to you change from another career that you might have had previously, because we ensure you get all the training and skills that you need.
Amazing. Right, last one. Paul, I'm sure you've covered this already, but how long is the course?
So the apprenticeship scheme is 3 years in total, give or take. Some people roll off a little bit earlier, some people just takes a little bit longer, but it's about 3 years long.
Now, are you I wouldn't say guaranteed, is it what's the career progression like after the apprenticeships?
So that all depends on sort of the individual and what your appetite is, but we've had a lot of our apprenticeships, go on to work at Network Rail for a long period of time, but they're principal engineers, senior engineers, head of maintenance, head of departments, a lot of people, and there's like there's a lot of technical other roles as well. There's like a whole host of different roles. It's almost like your first step into the railway itself. And then once you realize, what you'll soon realize, what a lot of people do, is how big the railway is as a whole, and also all the different career opportunities that are available. So once you're in, and as long as you've got an appetite to want to progress and try different things, the world's your oyster.
And also another fact, I don't know what it's like for Network Rail, but I know a survey in the UK for apprenticeships that 85% of apprentices stayed on in that career progression in that job once their apprenticeship had ended. So that's a pretty big number. I know a few that's it's like up to 90%, 95%.
Yeah, you know what? That doesn't surprise me at all. A lot of our apprentices that start tend to stay and eventually end up in pretty senior roles.
But I think that is all the questions from us.
Fab.
So thank you very much, guys, for joining. Remember, it is recorded and it'll be on our website. So if you want to miss anything or want to write a few notes down, it will be on our website within the week. Thank you very much, Amarvir, for coming.
No.
Thank you very much to Network Rail as well. Hopefully everyone has a nice lunch. And any last words, Amarvir?
No, just a massive thank you to everyone for taking time out of your day to join the webinar. I appreciate it's a commitment, so a massive thanks from me.
And thank you to you too. And thanks to all the listeners and viewers.
Cheers.
Cheerio, everyone.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.